This is DJ's Z7. It's my entry to the Nexus Starcraft design contest, unit design contest. Essentially, this is a 3D model of my unit, and the name, which is Sinful Ivan, above it shows exactly what that means. It's correspondent to the name. I just want to basically take the time to say thank you to Starcraft Nexus for allowing all Starcraft fans the opportunity to win and participate within Starcraft 2 beta. I think it's very original, the contest that they laid out, and yeah, I'm really glad that a fan website was able to just drop something like this. I'm sure a lot of Starcraft fans are very excited. Once again, thanks. Let's proceed with the information to the unit. This is basically going to be more of a commentary on what I thought and what was my process in creating this unit, the balancing, the tweaking for this unit, how it would actually work in the game, all these things that I was considering while actually making the design for the unit, as well as its abilities and its passive abilities and all these other things. The backdrop of Sinful Ivan consists of a couple weeks after Brood Wars has ended. The demise of UED Directorate has happened, and essentially it's left the Terran Dominion in shambles, trying to recover itself from the constant skirmish attacks from the Zerg, Queen of Blades, all the stuff. Personally, in this presentation, I'm not going to talk too much about the lore. A friend of mine's, Mike, is also participating in the contest, but he's doing the lore for this unit, Sinful Ivan. So I'm just going to, now and then I'm going to put a little bit of lore within there just because it complements the unit in and of itself, but I'm not going to delve too much into it like my roommate Mike is. Let's continue. This is a 3D model to Sinful Ivan about the colors and whatnot. Essentially, I wanted to make something that consisted with the Terran constructions in regards to their building, their architecture, if you will. At the same time, with units like the Hellion Siege Tank, very rugged look. It's always been part of the Terran architecture that they've always survived on what they can, and technology is implemented with that, even though it doesn't all the time look as sleek as possible. Sinful Ivan is even more of an exception because its point of origin consists of a point where there was so much chaos, if you will, and Mike will go into that later personally, but there was so much constant skirmishes going on that they had to adapt accordingly, and they took what they could in regards to pieces in order to construct Sinful Ivan, and at the same time they used the best technology within that. So it's good because it feels a bit like a camouflage in regards to how it will play in the battlefield, and by that I mean that essentially there's a lot of components that make Sinful Ivan unique. Balance is something very essential to Sinful Ivan. I wanted it to serve a practical use within the Terran army. I found that, at least from what my observations, that the StarCraft 2 developers believe that Terrans are the ones that need the most work, but the community believes otherwise, essentially believing that the Terrans have enough in their arsenal to continue to do what they need. I'm a little bit impartial to that. I needed the unit to be very versatile, but at the same time I also needed the unit to feel that it wasn't overpowered, and so when creating its abilities I made sure to manage that it had some leverage and some weak points as well. And I took all this into consideration because I didn't feel like if I put too many abilities then the player would be overwhelmed, but if I put too few then I would feel that the unit wouldn't be as versatile as I wanted it to be and adapt to certain type of battles and whatnot, and this is what I wanted for Sinful Ivan overall, so I needed to make sure I balanced these two when thinking about the whole situation, the scope of the battlefield in and of itself. Okay, I'm going to be discussing the several different abilities that are in the arsenal of Sinful Ivan. The first ability being Icarus. This is a strictly anti-air ability. It's a good ability because it allows good combinations with several units currently that are in StarCraft 2 beta that aren't being used as much. And by that I mean there's good units, but they're being circumvented. And this, I feel like Sinful Ivan provides a support to these units, specifically the Hellions, the siege tanks, by allowing anti-air when going to the battlefield. It's able to bring down several stronger units, not permanently. Its ability isn't to permanently ground these units, it's temporarily. So some of these units are like carriers, broodlords, battlecruisers, bigger units. Eventually though, it's not meant to take these units on head-on. Eventually, if the other player just masses these units with a ton of macro, they will overwhelm you, and Sinful Ivan will not be able to keep up with that. The animation that the anti-air ability Icarus would have is more of a gravitational pull. Think if you played the StarCraft 2 beta or seen videos like I have, it is kind of like the Phoenix's ability to simply lift enemies up in the air so it could take shots at it. Well, it would be in reverse. It would ground these units and it would look kind of like several waves forcing the unit down. Now originally I had planned to make an animation or several clip animations to describe every ability, but I just found myself not having the time to essentially finish these and polish them up, or even have them in a lower level quality of animation to show how these abilities would be used in the battlefield. Mostly just because of work and all this other stuff. Okay, let's continue with the next slide. Okay, this is the second ability. It is called the Gate. It specifically deals with the Terran versus Protoss. Because of that, I felt like a lot of Terran players, when confronting Protoss players, they feel the need to rely heavily upon EMP in order to fight against them effectively. This might not be the case in every game, but in a lot of late games it does become the case, and I felt like they needed another crossroads, if you will, in order to engage this. When the ability negate is used, it isn't completely permanent, it's temporarily, and it only lasts, I believe, 3.5 seconds to 4.5 seconds, or around that range. It also is the most costing ability that Sinful Ivan has, so it takes 50 energy, so it would only be able to be used twice within a Sinful Ivan's energy cost. And this restricts it, which means the player has to be able to know when to use it, when to not use it, how they're going to go about using it, if they wish to use it simply on one area that has several cannons, or they want to disable a production site that the Protoss unit has, etc., etc. I'd also like to note that it doesn't only apply to buildings and pylon energy. It also applies to Protoss's shields and barriers. And by that I mean it temporarily disables them. So it's kind of like an EMP, but it only disables them if they're within the radius of the Sinful Ivan. If the unit is embedded within the radius of Sinful Ivan, if they were to backpedal away from the radius of negate, it would essentially bring back their energy to full. So it's not like their energy is being depleted completely like an EMP is, or like an EMP does.